The sound of rain lashed against the glass of the rooftop, as if trying to erase every trace of what had just happened in the darkness. The condensation clung to the window, blurring out the dazzling city lights below. Thin white curtains fluttered helplessly in the wind, unable to fully shield two bodies tangled together on the long sofa near the balcony. Leon's hand gripped Vera's back tightly, as if letting go for even a second would make everything disappear forever. His breath came heavy and hot against her ear. Vera tried to stifle her moans, but the hurried, wild movements of Leon made every one of her breaths seem to melt into the chilly night air. No words were spoken, only the sound of rain, of skin against skin, of hurried kisses drenched in the longing that had been restrained for so many months. The feeling of danger seeped into every move. At any moment, they could be discovered. But they could not stop, could not turn back, like two moths drawn to a forbidden light so beautiful it demanded a price. "Are you afraid?" Leon whispered, his lips still trailing along Vera's neck. She let out a soft laugh, her eyes sparkling in the darkness. "I'm only afraid that when morning comes, all of this will have been just a dream." A flash of lightning lit up the window, illuminating both their faces, flushed with desire, exhausted yet still yearning. Somewhere far below, wedding music still played faintly, reminding them that in just a few hours, each would return to another person, to a different life. But in this moment, on the hidden rooftop, between the rain and the soft golden lights, Leon and Vera had only each other, only their aching bodies and all the regrets, as if the world had vanished behind that glass door. Where had it all begun? Was it that first stolen glance the night before the wedding? Or a chance brush of hands in a hotel hallway, where two lonely souls stumbled into each other amidst all the rules, responsibilities, and expectations? They never knew that just one heartbeat out of rhythm could lead to a lifetime of regret and a passion that had no name. The night before the wedding, the hotel was still brightly lit, even though it was close to midnight. The scent of wine, fresh flowers, and the gentle notes of music blended into an atmosphere both vibrant and strangely lonely. Two large families were hosting parallel wedding celebrations, but amidst that sea of people, two souls found themselves lost. Vera slipped away from the bachelorette party, her steps light on the thickly carpeted hallway, fingers idly playing with the last drops of wine in her glass. A thin nightgown draped her alluring body, its hem brushing against her bare thigh, each movement making her senses more sensitive than ever. As she passed by the bar on the ground floor, Vera stopped in her tracks. In the distance, Leon was sitting alone, sleeves rolled up, collar loose, his hair slightly tousled. His eyes were fixed on his glass, the golden light casting shadows on his sharp, handsome face. Almost as if hypnotized, Vera made her way over and sat beside Leon. For the first few seconds, neither of them spoke, exchanging only glances both hesitant and full of unspoken things neither dared to voice. Leon broke the silence, his voice deep and hoarse from the wine. "Can't sleep either, huh?" Vera curled her lips into a faint smile, her gaze lingering on his bare wrist. "The night before the wedding, everyone says you should sleep early to look your best tomorrow, but I don't feel like sleeping at all." They both laughed, a laugh half self-mocking, half an attempt to hide their private loneliness. The world around them seemed to shrink, leaving only the jazz notes drifting through the air and two pairs of eyes locked in place. Leon lifted his glass toward Vera, his fingertips brushing the back of her hand. That touch, whether accidental or intentional, sent a wave of heat racing down Vera's spine. I never thought I'd get married like this. Me neither. I never imagined myself sitting here, the night before I become a bride, and feeling so empty inside. Their whispers were as light as mist, but the echoes clung to them both. Leon leaned in closer, catching the faint scent of Vera's perfume, their eyes meeting above the rim of their glasses, the distance shrinking to mere centimeters, their breaths almost melting together. Suddenly, the bar door opened and a few relatives stepped in, searching for the bride and groom. Leon and Vera startled apart, their eyes lingering, all the things left unsaid hanging in the air. She stood, adjusted her nightgown, and offered a soft smile. "Good night, if you can manage it." "Wishing you beautiful dreams," Leon replied quietly, his gaze lingering on Vera's bare shoulder before she disappeared down the hall. That night, neither of them slept. Each returned to their own room, lying still on unfamiliar beds, their minds echoing with the image of the other. Vera tossed and turned, her hand gliding along her thigh, up her waist, imagining what it would feel like to have a man's hand slide over her skin, picturing Leon's hot breath against her ear. She bit her lip, pulled the thin blanket tightly around her, closed her eyes, yet couldn't quell the silent wave of longing rising inside. In his room, Leon was no different. He lay shirtless, turned to the wall, imagining the curves of Vera's body beneath her nightgown, wondering what it would feel like to touch her, just once, for real. Sighs, the sound of shifting bodies, and stifled moans in the dark seemed to connect the two distant rooms. Neither dared text, neither dared call, but within both of them, a forbidden hunger that had only just begun now grew into an unquenchable thirst. Outside, the city lights still shone, but for Leon and Vera, all light seemed to fade into the soft darkness, where only curiosity, yearning, and a silent, unspoken promise about a tomorrow no one could predict remained. And in the morning, they would meet again, amongst the crowd, in the grand ceremony, each in the role of bride or groom to someone else. But all of it, everything, had only just begun with this night before the wedding. On the wedding morning, the hotel was filled with an atmosphere both radiant and stifling. Every hallway was draped with fresh flowers, the hurried footsteps of staff, the chatter and urgent voices. All of it swept Leon and Vera into a dizzying whirl they felt powerless to escape. Vera sat before the mirror as the makeup artist brushed a silk-like powder over her skin. But beneath the crimson lipstick in her eyes, there was a deep, restless longing. The hairdresser's fingers ran along the nape of her neck, adjusting each strand, and Vera closed her eyes, wishing she could feel the hands of another, the one she shouldn't be thinking of today. A few rooms away, Leon stood tall in front of his mirror, hands gripping his tie tightly, eyes meeting his own reflection while his mind wandered elsewhere. In his head was last night, Vera's gaze, her soft laugh like an off note in the symphony of the wedding celebration. His chest still resonated with imaginary gasps, the memory of her scent infiltrating corners of his soul he thought he had long sealed away. The wedding commenced, everyone bustling from grand rooms to hallways and waiting lounges. Leon, almost by accident, or perhaps he wasn't even sure himself, walked past the women's dressing room. He caught Vera's laughter mingled with her bridesmaids, and his heart skipped a beat. Leaning his hand against the doorframe, Leon closed his eyes, feeling every thud in his chest, every nerve stretched taut by a desire he couldn't explain. It was at that moment Vera stepped out, a sheer veil still in her hand. Their eyes met at a turn in the corridor, in a sea of people where only their two hearts truly saw each other. They said nothing, only sharing a deep look, as if the world beyond them had ceased to exist. Vera offered a faint smile, tilting her head to avoid the glance of a passerby, trying to hide her fluster, but her spine suddenly burned as Leon moved closer. The space between them shrank to just a few steps, his breath almost touching the back of her neck. "Are you ready?" he whispered, so softly only the two of them could hear. "Ready for what?" Vera replied, lips trembling. Leon smiled, eyes full of secret meaning. "For everything today will bring. But it feels like you're waiting for something else." Suddenly, a staff member rushed past, nearly colliding with them, pulling them back to reality. Vera quickly tucked the veil into her pocket. Leon stepped away, straightening his cuff as if they were just two guests meeting by chance. The wedding continued with all the traditional rituals. Leon and Vera stood beside their official partners, taking photos, exchanging rings, smiling, accepting blessings. Yet every time their eyes met, a current ran through both their bodies, making everything else seem meaningless. Not long into the reception, it began to rain heavily. Some guests hurried off. The newlyweds were ushered into a lounge to avoid the downpour. While everyone was busy preparing for the next ceremony, Vera quietly slipped away from her bridesmaids, moving toward a hallway out of sight. Her legs trembled, unsure if it was from nerves or anticipation. Leon was already there, leaning against the doorframe of a small storage room at the end of the second-floor corridor. He pulled Vera inside, closed the door, and the darkness and the scent of white flowers mixed with the warmth of their bodies, creating a space that belonged only to them. Before Vera could speak, Leon pressed close, his hand gliding over her nape, his lips brushing her ear, whispering almost pleadingly, "Just 1 minute, I can't take it anymore." Leon's breath was burning. Vera's lips trembled. They sought each other instinctively, his hand tightening around her waist, pulling her to his chest, fingers gliding over the soft skin beneath the thin fabric of her wedding dress. Vera let out a gasp, struggling to suppress the moan rising in her throat. Their bodies melded, heartbeats and breaths intertwining. Outside, the rain pounded the roof, footsteps and calls for the bride echoing distantly. In that moment, both knew, for the first time, desire was breaking free of all logic. The sound from the hallway snapped them back. Leon released Vera, eyes still aflame, his hand stroking her cheek as if to say goodbye in a way that was never easy. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his lips still warm from her breath. Vera shook her head, gave a gentle, glistening smile. "Don't apologize, just remember this moment, just that." She quickly slipped out, blending into the crowd, adjusting her dress as if nothing had happened. But her chest hammered wildly, her breath still unsteady. Leon lingered in the dark, hand clenched, Vera's scent lingering on his fingertips. He knew this was only the beginning, and nothing could stop the fire now burning through the very heart of the celebration. And when the wedding music rose, among hundreds of people, only two hearts truly felt the desire just awakened. A desire as dangerous, secret, and devastatingly beautiful as this. Night descended on the hotel with a sudden, heavy downpour, washing away all the vibrant bustle of the day and draping the city in a mystical haze. The wedding celebration continued under pale yellow lights and the gentle sway of music, yet everyone seemed smaller, swallowed up by a sea of strangers. Every smile, every clinking glass, was just another mask in the ritual of social grace. Vera stood at the far end of the reception hall, a beautiful smile still playing on her lips for the guests congratulating her. But her gaze was always drawn to Leon's silhouette, lingering near the end of a hallway by the side stairs. Between them were hundreds of guests, the gulf of two lives already chosen, but even a single glance was enough to ignite every barrier in flames. Thunder rumbled, and the lights flickered once, then died completely, plunging the entire wedding into darkness for a few chaotic seconds. There were whispers, hurried footsteps searching for light, hesitant calls for each other. But in that darkness, Vera could feel her heart pounding faster, and she knew Leon was reaching for her too. Without a word, both were drawn toward the same direction, the second-floor corridor, where only faint light from the rainy street slipped through a small window. The door of a storage room stood slightly open, like a temporary escape from every chain holding them outside. Vera entered first, her shadow cast across the rain-dampened cement floor. Leon followed, gently closing the door behind them as if sealing a promise. It was just the two of them, in a small, darkened space, only a glimmer of light from the storm outside, illuminating the water droplets glistening in Vera's hair. Their breaths mingled, heavy and rapid, all the desires suppressed for so long now with nowhere left to go but to explode. Leon rushed to her, strong arms pulling Vera tight against his chest, his mouth claiming hers in a kiss both urgent and searing, as if determined to erase every distance and every notion of right or wrong. Vera trembled, her hands gripping the back of his vest, her whole body shuddering at each touch, each curling of his tongue, each burning breath they shared. They nearly melted into one another, needing no words, no reason. Leon hurriedly slid his hand beneath her wedding dress, feeling the smooth, heated skin of Vera's body. She tilted her head back, lips parting with a soft moan, breath coming fast and uncontrollable. His kisses trailed along her neck, down her collarbone, his hands restlessly exploring every curve, making Vera lose all control. They spun in the darkness, Vera's back pressed to the cold wall, her legs winding around Leon's waist, two bodies fusing as if the world had shrunk to only them, hidden, desperate, running from every gaze. The rain outside kept pouring, drowning out their ragged breaths, the sounds of skin against skin, the wet, unrestrained music of unleashed desire. Leon held Vera tightly, his gaze full of longing and almost hopeless need. "Are you sure?" he whispered, lips burning against her ear. Vera replied with nothing but a fierce nod and a blazing look, arms wrapped around his neck to pull him closer, her lips brushing his ear, trembling as she whispered, "Never in my life have I wanted anything more." They joined together, every movement urgent, every moan lost in breath and rain. The forbidden only made every sensation more intense, as if two lost souls had finally found their true home. In that moment, Vera clung to Leon's shoulders, teeth biting lightly into his skin to stifle her cries, while Leon's hands gripped her waist, feeling every wave of pleasure sweeping away every thought, every conscience, every wall that had held them apart for so long. They surrendered utterly to instinct, nothing left to stop the fire burning them alive. When the lights returned, Leon and Vera quickly put themselves back in order, sharing one last hurried kiss filled with the fear of being discovered, their eyes exchanging silent promises. They slipped out of the small room, returning to their roles as bride and groom to those who were not each other. But the feeling of those minutes would remain forever etched in them both. The wedding music played again, glasses were raised once more, but only two people truly knew the moment just past had changed everything. Nothing would ever be the same. The wedding reception ended later than expected. The lingering taste of wine, golden light scattered across marble stairs, and laughter gradually faded, giving way to the heavy, stifling atmosphere of the last formalities. Vera was led to the bridal suite with her husband, surrounded by countless congratulations, fresh flowers, wedding gifts, and the watchful eyes of family and friends, an invisible circle tightening around her. Leon also returned to his room, closing the door behind him. He sat on the edge of the bed, unbuttoning his vest one button at a time, sighing as Vera's perfume still clung to his fingers, his skin still warm from their urgent tryst in the darkness. He gazed at the ceiling, listening to the distant footsteps, the fading laughter from the hallways. Everything felt like a dream that had ended, yet inside him, a storm raged, making sleep impossible. Vera's room was awash in white, cool silk sheets on the bed, but her body burned from within. The man officially her husband lay passed out from too much celebration wine, completely unaware as Vera sat against the headboard, her eyes drifting toward the window. Outside, the city blurred in misty rain, car lights sweeping by like waves of light, making Vera feel all the more alone. A message popped up on her phone, just 4 words: "I need you. Rooftop now." Vera's heart skipped a beat. She glanced at her drunken, sleeping husband, then quietly slipped out of the room, her steps light as air, heart pounding wildly like a teenager on her first date. The hotel hallway was silent, only the faint hum of air conditioning and the soft glow of ceiling lights stretching endlessly to the corridor's end. The rooftop was cold and empty, only wind, light rain, and Leon waiting there. Back against the railing, city lights reflected in his eyes with a wildness that nothing could hide. He wore a white shirt, top buttons undone, his breath visible as wisps in the chill of late night. Vera approached, but before she could say anything, Leon pulled her into his arms. This kiss was no longer rushed like before, but slow, intense, each movement as if etched into memory. His hand slid over her nape, down her spine, pulling Vera closer, feeling every heartbeat, every ragged breath. Outside, rain merged with the growing sounds of their breathing, cold wind lashing bare skin, only making Vera's body burn hotter. Leon's hands never stopped exploring, sliding under her thin nightgown, caressing her bare shoulder, pulling the dress from her arms, exposing her trembling back to the wind. Vera let out a soft gasp, struggling to hold back the moan rising in her throat. Leon gently sat Vera down on the long bench by the rooftop, their bodies entwined, breaths mingling, fiery kisses running along her neck, shoulders, every inch of skin. Vera felt Leon's warmth and hunger seeping into every cell, his hands desperate as they rediscovered every soft curve of her body. "What are we doing?" Vera whispered, her eyes glistening with longing and emotion. "Tonight, I don't want to pretend anymore." Leon's voice was hoarse, his hand gripping her waist, lips close to her ear as he murmured, "Just you, just this night." There was no room for reason or fear. Both let instinct take over. Leon pulled Vera down, her body cradled in his strong arms, feeling every thrust of his hips, every heartbeat thundering in her chest. Vera tried to stifle her moans, but soon she couldn't control herself, her mind spinning in a sweet delirium of pain and fulfillment. They melted into each other like moths drawn to a flame, skin to skin, mouth to mouth, hands clutching tight. Their breaths, the sound of flesh meeting flesh, muffled cries swallowed by the rainy night and the city below. Where no one knew, no one saw, only 2 souls clinging to each other as if this would be the only time in their lives. At last they lay still, Vera's head resting on Leon's shoulder, her breath still trembling. She looked at him, eyes sparkling in the darkness and the faint city lights. "Are you afraid?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. Leon smiled gently, holding her tighter. "I'm only afraid that by morning, we'll have to part as if this night never happened." They said nothing more, letting the last whispers, the final embraces and kisses drift away with the cold wind, preserving a trace of warmth in a wedding night that was never truly theirs. Vera returned to her room as dawn approached, nightgown disheveled, hair in wild tangles, Leon's mark still on her skin. She quietly slipped into bed beside her sleeping husband, her heart a tangled mess, happiness, guilt, longing, and fear. Leon lingered on the rooftop for a long time, face tilted up to the sky, letting the cold wind dry the drops on his cheeks, unsure if they were rain or tears. That night, the city did not sleep, and in a hidden corner, two hearts truly belonged to each other, if only for the briefest moment of their lives. Early the next morning, the city awoke after a long night of rain, puddles glittering everywhere and cool, damp air curling along the hotel corridors. That fragile sense of peace lasted less than an hour before scandal erupted like a storm sweeping through both the Ashford and Lorne families. It all began when a hotel staff member accidentally caught Vera and Leon in each other's arms on the rooftop at dawn. Within minutes, the story had spread through whispers and curious stares, then exploded into a flood of messages and frantic phone calls among relatives, friends, and everyone who'd attended the wedding celebration the night before. Vera returned to her room, lips still marked by passionate kisses, her body not yet cooled from Leon's embrace, only to face the stunned look of her husband. He said nothing, only stared at her for a long time, a cold, heavy silence filled with suspicion and disappointment. Every minute felt like she was sinking deeper into a pit of guilt, eyes that had burned bright last night now welling with tears, her voice trembling but unable to speak. Leon fared no better. Dragged out into the hallway by his family, he faced sharp words, disappointed shakes of the head from his mother, father, and brother. It was as if a solid wall had closed in around him, making every breath heavy, every movement judged under the gaze of everyone around. The entire day, both of them were caught in a whirlwind of questioning, torment, shame, and pain. They weren't allowed to see each other, only able to send short messages, sometimes nothing but ellipses erased before being sent, terrified that someone might discover the last piece of their secret. In the midst of tense conversations, tears, and accusations, Vera sat quietly by the window, her fingers tracing a small bruise on her neck, the mark of last night's wildness with Leon. She felt the pain of her husband deeply, but she couldn't lie to herself about her feelings for Leon, the desire, the longing, and the loneliness that only vanished when she was with him. As evening fell, the hotel grew emptier as some families left early, scandal turning the joint celebration into a tragicomedy. But in a hidden corner by the emergency stairs, Leon and Vera finally managed to see each other one last time. A cold wind blew through the small window, Vera's hair a tangled mess, her eyes red but shining with a certain resolve. Leon held her tightly, as if trying to preserve this feeling forever before it was swept away for good. "Do you regret it?" he asked, his voice rough from restraint and sleeplessness. Vera pressed her forehead to his chest, hands gripping his shirt as if afraid he'd vanish. "I regret not having dared to live true to myself sooner. I regret pretending, trying to be perfect, trying to please everyone except myself." Leon gently stroked her cheek, his hand sliding across her cold skin, stopping at her neck. where last night's passionate bite still lingered. He whispered in her ear, his warm breath making Vera shiver. "I don't know what will happen next, but whatever happens, I can't forget last night. I can't forget you. Never." A rushed, tearful kiss, part farewell, part promise. Outside, darkness stretched along the corridors, everything blurring between regret and fear. The sound of footsteps in the distance made them pull apart, eyes full of things left unsaid. Vera turned away, hiding her tears in her tangled hair, returning to the bridal suite, where her husband stared quietly out the window, not bothering to ask anything more. Leon remained alone in the dark, heart aching, his hand clutching the pain and pleasure, guilty and longing, like a wound that would never heal. Both families decided to cut the wedding short, hoping to keep the scandal from spreading further. Gossip, scrutiny, prying eyes would follow Leon and Vera for a long time, but both knew that no social chain could ever erase the truth in their hearts. They had paid the price for crossing that line, but had also realized, in this life, some choices have no way back, and only the brave dare to follow forbidden love to the very end. That night, Vera sat alone by the window, hands clasped to her chest, remembering every touch, every breath, every whisper from Leon. Inside her, fear and happiness mixed, like the endless rain outside that never seemed to stop. As for Leon, he wandered slowly down empty hallways, his hand brushing a small scratch on his neck, the last memory remaining. Somewhere in the city, two hearts still beat to the same rhythm, still aching, still asking the question, could they ever begin again, now that everything had fallen apart? A week passed after the wedding scandal. The hotel had returned to its cold silence. Empty rooms stretching on, wilted wedding flowers discarded in bins outside, every trace of the big day erased with ruthless efficiency. But in the hearts of Leon and Vera, the aftershocks of that forbidden storm still burned, a slow fire that both scorched and warmed, impossible for anyone to extinguish. Vera lived like a shadow in the new apartment with her husband. Every night, she watched the headlights sweep past the window, recalling Leon's gaze, his breath, his arms around her. Her husband grew ever more distant, dinner cold and flavorless, every touch awkward, every smile hollow between two people desperately clinging to a relationship broken at its core. Each time she entered the bathroom, Vera looked at her body in the mirror. The pale skin still marked by faint traces of a night of passion on the hotel rooftop. Her fingers unconsciously traced the small bite on her shoulder, each breath still echoing with the moans she'd tried to suppress, the flavor of desire never truly fading. Night after night, Vera lay still in the darkness, wondering if she'd ever have the courage to break free of all constraints to live honestly with her own longing, or if she would forever play the dutiful wife in the mold her family had carved. Leon was no better. He buried himself in work, avoided all social gatherings, cut ties with mutual friends to escape the questions and whispers that trailed him everywhere. But wherever he went, whatever he did, Vera's whispers haunted his mind. The trembling squeeze of her hand, that hurried kiss, the pleading in her eyes for just one more night. Sometimes, in the pale light of afternoon, Leon would pause on a street corner, heart tightening at the memory of Vera's soft skin in his arms, her breath on his neck, sweet and bitter all at once. There were days when Vera wrote Leon long letters, telling of sleepless nights and the ache of longing that flared every time the rain swept the city. She never sent them, just tucked them away in a small drawer like relics of their forbidden love. And as for Leon, whenever he tried to write anything, The first letters always spelled Vera's name, even if he'd erase them, hide them away as if they'd never existed. One late afternoon, when the rain finally cleared, Vera decided to leave that cold house. She boarded a train out of the city, her heart a tangled mess of thoughts, unsure what she was running from herself, her duties, or the longing to live truly. The train rattled through sunset, every jolt a reminder that the past still clung to her, yet ahead lay a crossroads no one had dared to take. At the final station, Vera stepped off, hair wild in the chill wind. She slowed when she saw Leon waiting, leaning against an old lamp post, determination and gentleness shining in his eyes as before. They looked at each other for a long time, saying nothing, only the wind blowing through the space between them, carrying the remnants of kisses, forbidden nights, and dreams still unfulfilled. Leon stepped forward, extending his hand, the same hand that had once held Vera in the rain, had cherished, had yearned for her. "Do you dare move forward?" he asked, his voice husky, his eyes trembling yet steady. Vera looked at his hand, feeling a lifetime of regret and longing distilled into this moment. She didn't answer, just moved closer, placing her hand in his. Together, they quietly left the station, walking into a new city, uncertain what lay ahead, knowing only that this time they chose each other despite the gossip, the pain, every barrier life could raise. The story ends, or perhaps only just begins, with a slow kiss beneath the trees, where no one judged, no one forbade, just two hearts brave enough to live honestly, even if the whole world turned its back. Whatever becomes of Leon and Vera, that forbidden love would forever remain a sweet scar on their souls, a place where memories of bodies, breaths, desire, and whispered words in the dark could never fade.